Nice to see you all. I'm Josh Wigler. I'll be moderating this panel about The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, the book of Carol. We all just watched season 2, episode 4. A lot went down. We got questions. We're getting answers. Let's start bringing them in. He is the chief content officer of The Walking Dead universe. He is an executive producer on Daryl Dixon, book of Carol. He is Scott M. Gimple. Come on down. If you're mad about anything that happened, this is probably the guy to complain to. He is the showrunner and executive producer of this show, David Zabel.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
He is the chosen one. And you should all feel quite blessed to be in his presence. Let's bring him in. Puech Scigliuzzi. Her name's in the title, so it's her show, Melissa McBride. Yeah, of course. His name's also in this show, so it's kind of his show, too. Let's bring in Norman Reedus. Oh, they got it. I'm in a nice little cup, too. That's pretty amazing. All right. Well, folks, you okay, Scott? Everything's all right? That was a lot.
I wanted to set a clock for everybody.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. So, if you didn't hear their reaction, what did we think? It was big. It was big. It was big. Scott, I want to start with you. This is a huge episode of Daryl Dixon season 2. A lot of things coming to a head. Some people getting together, some people leaving. Talk me through your perspective of this sort of critical juncture of The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon.
It's where everything comes together in a beautiful way. I got to tell you. I thought, I resisted running walkers for a long time. For a long time.
I broke you down.
You broke me down. You broke me, and it was amazing. I mean, the sequence with them. Cadrone in this episode is horrific. I don't know. This was one of the more satisfying hours of The Walking Dead I've seen in a long time.
Yeah. David, you had a lot on your plate assembling this together. How did that go? I mean, a lot of pressure, but a lot of really exciting creative opportunity too.
Yeah, it's really obviously a crucial turning point in the season and in the show. And we had these two parallel stories going on for a while, which were Daryl and Carol's sort of separate stories, and they needed to come together at this point in mid-season of season 2. And then we had some other business to take care of in terms of the story. So there was just a lot. I mean, the beauty of it is there's a tremendous amount going on, and the challenge of it is trying to balance all those things because there are a bunch of really significant events happening for our characters in our story here.
Louis, Laurent's not in this one, and I feel like maybe dodged a bullet because the bullets were flying fast and furious. But on set, I mean, I'm sure that this is a close cast. There's a lot going on. What were some of the vibes around this episode specifically while you guys were making everything?
I mean, there's always a lot of fun with everybody. And I mean, we like each other, don't we? Yeah. And I mean, there's always a really good vibe on set, and I'm always happy, and I hope they are too, to go on set and work with us.
Melissa, Norman, are you happy? Just to follow his question.
No, I'm not.
You guys happy? You seem happy.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I like you, Louis.
Yeah. We like to reassure each other up here on the stage. But we get the two of you back together for the first time in a good long minute. So I promise you we're happy. We're very happy. What was it like to reunite with Norman in this capacity, Carol and Daryl together again?
It was great fun. It's true. We have a good time. And Norman is actually he's very funny. He can be very funny.
You have the power if you choose to be.
Yeah, I'm more
Does, he
goofy than
wields that
funny.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not going to be funny today.
Yeah, we had a scene the other day. We were filming where I kept doing like the Hawaiian hula dance. I do stuff like that. I don't know if it's funny or annoying.
I think your
don't
daughter
know.
has an influence over you.
Wrapped around her finger.
Yeah. It's fun.
You had been, Norman, obviously you guys shot season 1. You were really in the thick of it. Your name right there in the title. We're also excited to have Melissa back and to have Carol back in this universe. What was it like to get here you are sort of ingrained in New Walking Dead, right? This new show that has a very different flavor from everything that came before. And then we're going back and we're bringing in these 2 incredible elements from the original series. What was it like to get to work with Melissa again in this context?
Well, I was always texting and calling Melissa, like, come on, hurry up, get over here. It's cool. You get to do things that maybe you wanted to do before, but we had such a large cast, and you can explore different things you want to do. And she came up with David a storyline that had to do with her past, which kind of is a big part of the second season. So I was really excited to get her there and get her energy there and get to work with her again. It was I really loved the cast in France. Romain and Louis and Clemence, Eric, they're all great. And they were really excited to be there, so they brought their own energy to it. Our camera team over there is just phenomenal. And we brought that, can I say that? Brought the camera team with us to Spain?
You just did.
Yeah.
Whether you can or not.
And they're trying to beat their own country, so
Sure.
it's all the elements are there, all the pieces are there, except for her. So to have her there, it all evened out.
Melissa, was there any, jumping back into this character, into Carol? What was the process like after, being away from her? Probably the longest you had been away from her since you started, I have to imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yes. The wardrobe helps, and he helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the banter with Daryl. And I was doing some things by myself while looking for him, and with Manish, Ash, beforehand, and it was just the story, it was the wardrobe, most of all, getting back into her boots, so to speak.
Yeah.
It takes a minute to
It does take a second.
find your footing in a new location, right?
That's a really good point, because you were, down in Georgia for so long, and you're making the journey that Daryl and Carol are. It's a big reset.
It was actually helpful, though, to be in a unfamiliar place, and we shot that in and around Paris, because Carol has a certain desperation, and I think that just being in an unfamiliar place and a new place helped. It helped me with that.
David, I want to ask you about the scene in which these 2 characters come back together. And I don't know about all of you, but I love that you start with Daryl's new favorite weapon, the Morning Star, right? Or is it the flail?
Morning Star.
Morning Star. I got it right the first time. Don't correct yourself. Good lesson. And you're walking down, and we're with you, and we're really in your perspective. And as you're getting deeper into the fight, you're hearing gunshots going off, and you get the sense that something is happening on the other far side of the room. The dust clears, and lo and behold, this moment that you'd been seeking all season long, you didn't know was coming your way. This is a very big dramatic reveal and a huge action scene to boot.
Well, yeah, I'll say that scene, was something from the very beginning that in the writer's room and for the whole production, we knew that was a crucial, exciting thing that we had to build to. So it actually went through very many versions, more versions than most scenes do. And I think we sat down, we talked about it with Norm and Melissa, and the last version that you see of that scene was written probably 2 or 3 days before we filmed it, because part of what came out of the conversation was something we had been talking about for a while, which was, should it be more a scene that comes during action, or should it be a scene that's more of a dialogue sort of reunion scene? And we had different versions of both of those. And in the end, we sat down and we said, the thing that would be most exciting is that they find each other in the midst of an action sequence. And that was really decided just days before we filmed that with Michael Slovis, who directed that and did an amazing job. But yeah, I mean, we all knew like that was a crucial and exciting thing, and we wanted to get it right. And I think we got it right.
Scott, in overseeing this franchise, which is enormous, we have the Flagship that has ended, but the show goes on. We've had we've had Rick and Michonne on our TV screens this year. To see Daryl and Carol, these characters from all the way back in season 1, who have had this really sort of seismic ride across the franchise, seeing those two characters back together on screen. I have to imagine, because I know you're so in this, and I know that you're like emotionally really in this. Did you have a visceral response to seeing the footage coming back?
I did, and the scene we're talking about, in particular, the lead up to it is so intense. You get so many different emotions. I mean, there's some horrific things that happen leading up to it. There's some shocking things happen. There's some gross things that happen.
Yeah.
But then,
They really were.
I think it's 501, season 5, episode 1. I'm an old timer. It's when Carol sort of liberates Terminus.
Yes.
And when thank you.
Right on it.
We didn't forget that. That was a big moment for all of us, I think, was the raid on Terminus.
But when Daryl and Carol reunite in that, you have it on the page, and it's like, you're like, oh, I hope that's emotional. And what they did is, like, to me, like, iconic. Just that reunion. And this, I feel, even topped it. Because of the emotional, well, it's just the emotional places that they were in and the history that they had, and yes, their performances. I was just goofing around. Your performances are always great. It just, I got one of Norman's trademarks. It was incredible the way that you guys came together on screen like that, and yeah, for all this, I am a Walking Dead geek, and that made my head explode.
Yeah.
It made my head explode in like dailies.
Not in the Genet way, though. Because you're still here, which is good.
Am I?
That is an open question.
Yeah.
Where are we?
I'm standing up when everybody's sitting down. Am I?
You're doing great.
I mean, listen, there's all these things that happen, but at the end of the day, it's about the characters, and it's about the emotions that they make you feel. And that is a moment that if you love The Walking Dead, it makes you feel a great deal, and that's what it's all about.
That first take, I decked her.
You decked her?
In the original series.
Yeah.
At Terminus.
God,
I went to hug her and I went through her. I was really excited. Yeah.
We were amped up, like it was a really charged moment, so,
There's a lot of hair
No
in my
decking on
face.
this
I didn't see
scene, though. What was the energy like on set for the reunion?
It was a big day. There was a behind-the-scenes crew that day.
Yeah.
We had interviews.
Lots of choreography going on. There was a lot.
Yeah.
And a fight scene in that's long.
Ton of choreography for
ton of choreography, ton of mistakes.
It had one of the best outtakes I've seen on our show, which was that when Melissa and Norman are hugging, she has a gun in her hand, and one of the background walkers did not know that they were supposed to stop. It was not time for them. So the walker kept coming, so as they were hugging, Melissa just lifted the gun and went poof. I was like,
Well,
it could make the cut. It could make the cut, but maybe we should have left it in. I don't know.
That is acting.
Yeah.
That is acting.
That's a great that's a good alternate version of this.
Yeah.
I think is pretty nice.
She was trying to shoot me.
But I'm sure, yeah. But I mean, I imagine that like you're saying, it's such an action-heavy sequence that you probably are really focused on it technically, right? More so than
it's a math problem.
Emotionally,
Yeah.
and how much in that case specifically. Your history together, you've worked together, you know each other, you've been, colleagues, friends, I assume, for so long.
The great thing about that was that all the math falls away at some point.
Yeah.
Where they just lock eyes, they see each other, and all the noise and everything just falls away.
Yeah.
And what a trippy moment that must be. On the others, I mean, just halfway across the world to see,
But to get there, there's a lot of
right?
Yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of stepping on stunt people and getting an elbow in the face.
Sure.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
But I
there's
love
that,
that moment. They meet when they come
Yeah.
together and just like the sound goes out. They're the only two people on the planet. Like he's in jail. He hears everything falling apart, the war, and I think we did a really good thing of amping up the energy and then like slamming on the brakes.
Yeah. Yeah, the sound design in the scene is excellent, among other things. So that's the good news. The bad news is, Isabelle. Why?
Wow, that was plaintive.
Why?
Yeah, wow.
Well, I was sad. Were you guys sad? That was so sad. David, why?
That's why, to make you sad.
Yeah.
Well, we love the character of Isabelle, and we love Clemence, who played Isabelle fantastically. It was just amazing.
Incredible. She's so good.
But it was looking at the sort of grand plan of the show and building to sort of where we felt like it was going to go, and specifically in terms of kind of getting to a version that was really Daryl and Carol trying to make their way through new territories and new environments. And so that they seem to go together. And also just on a cosmic level, it seems that happiness is a hard thing to hold on to in the apocalypse. And so this was a moment to really rip the guts out a little bit for the audience, like you're just saying, and for the character, and give him something fantastic, which is his old friend coming to him at the same time that something else very, very valued is being taken away.
Yep. Louis, you worked so closely with Clemens over the course of these, season and a half. What was it like for you to lose her as a colleague here?
Well, I mean, it changes a lot, right, when she's not on set. But, she did give a really good vibe on set, and she's like a lovely lady when you get to know her. So I guess I miss her a bit. So,
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody misses her, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was cool, and, she taught me so many things. So I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah.
It was
How
also,
do you-
sorry, one other
Yeah.
thing, just to add to that, is also the idea was to have Carol sort of arriving at Daryl's lowest moment,
Yeah.
right? Because we felt like in terms of the relationship being sort of dramatically most delved into, that would be the most effective thing. So we were like, what's the lowest we can put Daryl in this same episode at least, where Carol has arrived for him, and move forward from that. And that plays out in the subsequent episodes and even into some of the work we're doing now.
And I might be projecting, but in that take where Daryl sees her, I just get the vibe, you totally feel how low he is, but I also get this vibe of like, I'm at my lowest, of course you're here.
Yeah.
Like at the moment that I need you,
Right.
You're here. And I just saw that on Norman/Daryl's face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All true.
How was playing that moment for you? I mean, a lot has happened between Daryl and Isabelle. They just kissed, like this just happened.
Yeah, we're talking about headspace and stuff, and like if you think about it, our entire adult lives we've been running and fighting. Like that's all we've done: run and fight, run and fight. Maybe there's another way. Like maybe even if your life expectancy is shorter, maybe there's a better quality of life that we're missing out on. And I think that's sort of entering the atmosphere now on the show. And I think all of these story points leading up to that have what would that be like?
Yeah.
I didn't get that. Why can't I have that? So I think that's kind of, a flavor in the air, so to speak.
Is it, Melissa, for Carol, seeing Daryl this way, is this a new side of him that she's seeing in this moment of grieving Isabelle?
I think that for Carol, the whole circumstance is very surprising.
Yeah.
First of all, that he's there in the first place, that she's there in the second place, that this was happening. Well, I thought you were coming back.
Yeah.
What's going on?
He's wearing suspenders. What's happening?
Yeah, what's up with that?
What happens in the nest stays in the nest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know you anymore.
Yeah. But you know what scene I adore in this episode is your scene with Clemens and being there for her in her lowest moment too, and immediately having sort of like, I don't know if it's sort of this instinct of this is an important person, or even this is just a person who's hurt right now. And Carol, we talked about Terminus before, and I think there is sort of this Sarah Connor edge to her. And I think that underneath that too, I was talking to Greg Nicotero the other week for an article that was on The Hollywood Reporter, and he talked about how Carol's not a badass, is what he said. He said that Carol is efficient. He says that Carol does what needs to be done. And I think like Carol's a badass and she's efficient is sort of my take. But I think my interpretation of it anyway was that both of those things are in such display in that moment because it's badass to be empathetic. It's badass to slow down when someone is hurt and injured, and Carol does that in that moment. I just wondered what it was like to play that for you.
To me, Carol is Carol. Like a lot of us, we are just who we are. We're not really a badass, but we do badass things, you know?
I never have.
Yes, you have.
I'm still waiting.
You've done some badass things.
Yeah.
I know you have.
Yeah.
We've all done some badass
There's a great photo that Clemence just sent me. Do you remember that night? So in Europe, to keep warm, they have these rubber water bottles, right? And they walk around with these little water rubber udder bottles, right? And we were like, what does that do? And then you're like, that's so ridiculous. And you're like, oh. It's so nice. But she sent me a picture of the three of us like freezing.
Holding our rubber bladders.
Yeah.
They call them bladder.
They're kind of great.
They are
actually.
great.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so some good news again. Janae is dead.
Good news.
With respect,
She's
great character, great villain, but like we needed a win. I think we needed a win on the other side of Isabelle. So David, can you talk through? We were talking before actually upstairs, and what I love about this episode is doesn't it have like season premiere, season finale energy? Like I think this episode, and it's episode 4. And I love that because I think that's the kind of thing that just knocks you out. You sit down on Sunday night, you're expecting a ride, but this is seismic. So putting Janae in her death and her really explosive, very Walking Dead death in this episode. Can you talk about we're talking about the math of building, a scene, the math of building an episode.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, this episode is sort of this big turning point in a 6-episode season where we're trying to tell a very full story that gets, from a beginning to a middle to an end, we're packing it in. So for me, like every episode is packed with event. This one certainly is. In this case, we definitely sort of wanted the quid pro quo of we have a terrible loss with Isabelle, but there's some kind of cosmic payback in the termination of our villain for the past 2 seasons.
Yeah.
So there was this sense of like we need to reassure ourselves that like there is some justice because that's so sad what happens with Isabelle. So that's sort of the calculus of those two being in the same episode, and also knowing the story that we wanted to make sure we got to in sort of the last part of the season, which involved Lo Sang and the nest, and what happens with Laurent when he doesn't have his mother figure from his whole life anymore. And knowing we only had 2 episodes to do that in, it lets us pack these episodes with lots of event, and that's what happened there.
Louis, I wanted to ask you about Laurents Journey now, because I feel like there's a sense of there's always been a sense of urgency, but behind like getting the character to safety and what he potentially represents. I think it's very effective that your character is absent from this episode because there's so much like paternal concern for Laurent. So as much as you can say, Laurent without Isabelle how does that shake the foundation of that character where faith is so central to him, and I think humanity is such a central piece of him as well, that to lose his mother figure must be devastating?
I mean, he's definitely lost because he's been brought up by her, and it's kind of his mother, and she's always been there for him. And I guess it's a lot of change, and he's kind of scared of where he's going to go now. But I mean, he does have Daryl that's always there to help him. And so, I mean, we're going to see what's going to happen, but I mean, hopefully something good.
I hope so. I hope so. Daryl and Carol are both some of the greatest characters on The Walking Dead, full stop. But to continue the sentence, I think that they're some of the best characters to pair with kids on this show.
Yeah. Well.
Are you and Laurent making cookies anytime soon together?
Don't look at the flowers.
Yeah, don't look at the flowers.
Yeah.
Stay away. He knows.
Ted Coleman's right there.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
He knows.
Ted Coleman is sitting here, by the way.
The great Tyrese himself.
Tyrese.
But I think that seeing, Daryl has had a lot of paternal instinct over the course of the show. I think here, there's this moment where he seems to think that maybe he should just find the secure place in France and leave him there, and that's what's best. And Carol seems to kind of question, you sure that's what's best for you? And so I wonder what's going on with Daryl, especially with Isabelle gone. Is there some sort of like pivoting of priority of like, that's my kid, I gotta go get my kid?
That sentiment directly happens on the next episode.
Yeah.
So I can't really talk about
That
it.
conflict, yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly. And she's trying to suss it all out while Daryl's in a direction, which is
Yeah.
in a nutshell. Kind of.
All right, no spoilers. I'm not gonna.
I'm trying not to, but
I think
it
well done.
directly goes into that.
Totally, for sure. Dépaysante. That's the word, yes?
Yeah.
Did I get it okay?
You're close enough.
You're close enough?
Yeah.
It's to look at something for the first time and see, or look at something again and see it differently. I wonder, especially for you, Scott, seeing the way in which The Walking Dead has grown since the end of the Flagship series. You had a very exciting Comic-Con panel. Was anyone there at Comic-Con yesterday? A very exciting panel, talking about the future of Daryl Dixon, talking about the future of Dead City that's going to be coming back next year. Seeing the state of the franchise right now and how all of these shows are sort of like really boring in on character. Do you right now see The Walking Dead differently on the other side of seeing a few of these seasons of the new shows?
Good question.
Do I see it differently?
Thanks.
As far as like working on things, after the mothership, some things we do are really experimental that maybe don't have any of the classic characters. And then some things have those classic characters, but in a new way, whether they're in New York City, whether they're in Paris, Spain. I'll say, that is how I pictured it. That said, I was in Spain 2 weeks ago. And during the Paris shoot, I couldn't go to Paris. I was working on The Ones Who Live, so I was in a much more elegant place of Clifton, New Jersey. Yeah.
Careful.
Yeah, like why go to Paris when you can go to the TikTok diner?
Yeah.
But I got to go to Spain this time, and I saw The Walking Dead being made in Spain by this Spanish crew in this ancient village. And though, I see dailies or, I see the cuts, being there and seeing it done, yes, I saw it completely differently. I was like, oh my God. Mostly I was on set in Sonoy, Georgia, on a lot of the same streets that we just used over and over again. And to be in this ancient place and to see Daryl and Carol having dinner, and to see this crew just putting it all together, it blew me away. It blew me away. It felt like we were on another planet. And I guess I felt both old and young, like Kirk in Wrath of Khan.
Sure.
Thank you.
What?
Yeah. We'll talk about it later. No, I'll catch you up. Seeing a Spanish crew make the show, I got choked up.
Melissa, it's a similar question of getting to play Carol in this different context, but in this, literal, physical, different context, and seeing The Walking Dead unfold in Europe. How have you seen this whole journey differently by getting to really go into a completely different universe now on a different side of the planet?
It's very much the same thing. You have these moments where I don't know. I go into hyper-focus when I'm working sometimes, and then I have these drop-in moments where I look around and I'm like, wait a minute, yeah. This is I'm in a whole other country with a whole other crew with the same characters 14 years later, still, what? Action, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it hits you sometimes, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the fact that this show has been around for so people here, I'm sure, have grown up with this show. I think for you as actors, I imagine that there's just been such a dramatic evolution and change in your. I don't have to imagine a huge change in your lives from making this show, but there's also got to be the same question that anyone has when you do something for so long, is like, how do I keep this fresh for myself? Is it time for a change? And I think that the way that Daryl and Carol specifically are getting explored right now shows how much is in the tank. More in the tank than I think that they're going to have to fly back, however they're going to have to get back. But for you, Norman, specifically, and I know that you, while making the Flagship, had a lot of thoughts about where Daryl should wind up. And you used to talk about like goes out west, sort of like Man with No Name, right? Like kind of energy. But I feel like we're a long way from that if we're going to get there. There's so much life in this. Do you feel that way right now playing this character?
Yeah, I kind of have little kid energy all the time. Like I'm interested in everything. I kind of never think of it going backwards. I have nostalgic moments that I have, and back when we were shooting the show in Georgia, there was a certain vibration on set where you could just look at each other and everyone just sort of had a smirk, and we're like, yeah, we're doing it. Like we're onto something good. It feels like that for me there, and so I'm constantly trying to find the new. I don't even have to find the new because everything's so brand new. It's easy, but to take. The evolution of Daryl from way back when to now is so different.
Yeah.
Like he's such a different guy. But as far as the show, and the artistry and the people putting together the show, from the writing to the cameras to, it's all fresh energy, and I kind of thrive off fresh energy. So I never get bored. I'm constantly looking forward. The new cast members bring a brand new energy. It's hard not to get wrapped up in the wave. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Speaking of keeping things fresh, you're doing that by freshening up some of these rotting things on the show. You mentioned
That was a good seg.
That was pretty good.
It's the first badass thing I've ever done. Thank you. Very exciting moment for me. The walkers are running. They're runners. They're running now. This had to have been like a years-long conversation of, can we ever get there? And if we do, how do we do it? How do we make it so that they're not just shambling around anymore? And there's been like a steady buildup for years now of something's changing with some of the walkers. There's different variants. Here we have like the actual experimentation that is going on. But Scott, take us through the creative process a bit as you guys are evolving the walkers.
I think we both can.
Yeah.
It was a tennis game. I mean, there is like this deep mythology in France that we have as to how this is possible, and we had a little glimpse of it in the tag of The Last World Beyond. That just had mostly to do with the universe.
Yep.
And there, you know, we have pretty hard rules around this stuff too, but things are different in France.
Right.
There's big things that happen. Maybe one day we'll even see what happened.
Right.
And then we calibrated it in really specific ways, you know.
That was a lot of Scott's and my early conversation, was how do we, within the context of the rules of the universe in a way that makes sense, how do we find new ways to express the scariness of walkers and make them more threatening, especially because that's just better storytelling for the characters, you know. So to have, in the first season, to have Norman arrive in France and be faced with things that he has not dealt with before, that's just better for the story, for the character, for Norman to be able to play. And so that's where Burners came from, and then also this slowly evolving idea that we worked out because it was delicate, you know, with, you know, we don't want to break anything. To have,
You really
have
wanted him to run,
experimentation.
didn't you, David?
Well, I just wanted him to be scary.
You wanted to make him sweat.
And Norman and I talked about
Yeah.
this too, was like, he doesn't, you know, it's not so interesting to be like an invulnerable superhero.
And
You
on
know,
top
so-
of that, it's like France. Like, we don't just want,
There's a language barrier. There's so many levels of.
we want him to, we wanted Daryl to be in a completely alien situation where he didn't know up from down.
Yeah.
Right.
And that, we wanted every dimension of that, and the walkers were included in that. And then just, David took the ball and ran with it. And thank you. That was Chad Coleman, by
Ran
the way.
with it, yeah. He's on it. Chad's on it.
It just, we wanted to make Daryl not know who he was anymore, or who the world was, or what the world was anymore.
Yeah.
And then David took it to a next level. It led to more story, and that was the cool thing.
Yeah. And Daryl had never left the country before.
I don't think Daryl ever even heard of France.
Yeah. So like he goes there and he's had some great experiences, but is there part of him that's like, I'm really glad I never did study abroad. Like this is scary.
There's a great scene. It's a quick scene, but I'm walking through France. It's all destroyed, and there's an older couple having dinner, and they're by candlelight, and someone playing like a cello or something.
Yeah.
And he's looking at it like, what, people still do that? You know, I love that, those little flavors. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Melissa, running walkers or walking walkers, which is scarier?
Running walk. They're horrifying.
Yeah.
They're very, very scary.
Yeah.
Amped up. Yeah, ramped up. Amped
Do we know how the walker actors are doing underneath all that makeup as they also now have to run? Is that better or worse?
They're having a blast, to be honest.
The French walkers, you know.
Did they love it?
Yeah.
They were super psyched. The French walkers were super psyched, and that I don't have as much history as these guys have with the whole universe, but I know that particular zombie school that Greg did with the French walkers was quite an event. We had a lot of dancers in that group, and so they were able to do things physically that were quite unusual and cool, and they were just so psyched. They were so psyched to have The Walking Dead in France that we had a lot of people show up who wanted to be part of it.
When we were taking when Carol was driving the ATV with Codron on the back of it, and the walkers were running behind it, we did that over and over and over again, and it was so windy and so cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember I kept, like, I could see behind me every once in a while, and they were just like,
Yeah.
Could you slow down?
They were.
Crazy. It was
That was a brutal
crazy.
night. That was a brutal night that night.
It was.
The performance of I mean, now I'm getting into really fine geek stuff, but the performance.
That's why we're here, yeah?
The performance of the running was amazing to me because there is still some like fluidity and like noodleness to the limbs. Like they're throwing their bodies forward, and because you know we would police that stuff hard on set for just walking.
Yes.
And then to see the way that they're kind of like leading with their chests, sort of like throwing their bodies forward, it was. I mean, kudos to Mr. Nicotero. That's some amazing choreography.
Louis, what is your first memory of seeing a zombie? These guys are old pros.
That was with Greg. I remember it was the first or second week of the shoot. Episode 1, we were shooting at the school, and I remember it was in a hallway. I was talking with Greg for the first time. We were just talking about Walking Dead, how it was all the other seasons, and I see this walker like right behind him, and I'm like, I just took a moment to like look again, and I saw a walk, and I was like, wow, this is really well done. I kind of got creeped out, like for the first 10 seconds, but then I was like, all right, it's normal here.
It's just a day at work, you know? Heck of an office. So you've already mentioned some of you are fresh off a plane from Spain in production on season 3 of the show, which we're psyched about. But I would like to, before we move on to Spain, we still have 2 episodes left of this season. And I think that it's been such a great character on the show has been France. And so as a viewer, I'll miss it, but I wonder as people who were working there or working with it as the story, as the canvas, fond memories. What do you think when you think back on your time filming this in France? What do you take with you?
I remember the first day we were filming with a donkey, right? And the donkey wasn't having it. And the you know, in Georgia we're like bang, 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 bang. We shoot. It's, you know, and we're sitting there and we do the first take, and the camera does this move, the Steadicam, and then they all stop. And they all stopped filming, and they all rolled cigarettes, and then they sat there, and they started speaking in France, and I'm like, what are we waiting on? Right? For them to, you know, and I mean, not even at the end of the scene, like, take one.
We slowed down.
Break.
The walkers went faster.
Yeah. But, somebody translated for me and said he was translating as they were doing it. It might have been you. Was that you?
Me?
I think so.
Okay, it
Oh,
wasn't you.
Louis?
But they translated and they said that the Steadicam was, Lorenzo was talking about what story am I telling with the move of the Steadicam? And I was like, oh, take your time. You know what I mean? There's a level of artistry that we had in Georgia as well, but it's different everywhere. It's different in Spain. That, you know, the people around us are bringing flavor to it, and that's one of the first memories I had was like, oh, they really care, you know.
Yeah.
It wasn't a job. They were like, this is going to be great.
Yeah.
So that was my first one.
Melissa, do you have a similar moment? I was shocked to hear that the stuff that was being filmed in Maine was not filmed in Maine. Those Maine scenes were all in France. I go to Maine a lot. It's like, gosh, this is embarrassing. I can't tell that that's not Maine. What memories do you have of the time that you got to spend in France this season?
I think really it's the people and the time that this happened in my life. Getting to France, not being at home, being welcomed in France, the people that were working, the cast and the crew that were really excited to be on a show that was already established but was something brand new at the same time. I think just being all part of that together is something that really, really just stands out to me, the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Louis, these people came to France to make a zombie show and had a big impact on your life, welcoming them into France and everything. How was this experience for you?
I mean, really overwhelming, you know. I mean, meeting all those great people and working with them. So I'm really thankful, and that just changed my life forever. So I can't thank them enough. So yeah.
Such a good kid.
Well, we can't thank all of you guys enough for taking the time. Unfortunately, we are at the end of the road here, but we've got 2 more episodes of Daryl Dixon, Book of Carol.
Check it out.
Still to come. I'm hyped. I hope you guys are hyped, and thank you all for making the show and taking the time. Seriously. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.